Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here. A quick preview for Gervonta Davis versus Ricardo Nunez. This fight goes down on the 27th of July and it takes place at the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore. So this is a homecoming for Gervonta Davis. Hopefully the local fans show up and create a great atmosphere for this fight. It's certainly good for the Baltimore boxing scene for Gervonta Davis to be having this fight because, you know, he is their biggest star right now. So for him to come back is just good for the Baltimore boxing scene. So I do like that aspect about this fight. But is this fight a good fight? It's got to be said, no. It's not a competitive fight. Ricardo Nunez, he is a mandatory challenger, so you can't really blame Gervonta Davis for taking this fight, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's a poor fight and a no-name opponent, you know? It really is disappointing that the WBA named this guy as mandatory challenger, because ultimately he's not beat any legitimate contender, he's never won a final eliminator, so I'm not sure how this guy is getting this title shot, but you know, it's not really surprising. The WBA don't exactly cover themselves in glory, and if you just look at their work in the super featherweight division in recent years, they've made some bizarre decisions. You know, they gave Gervonta Davis the title he holds today, when originally the real champion was Alberto Machado, but they stole the real version of that belt from him and gave it to Gervonta Davis. So listen, the WBA right now seem to be pulling out all of the stops for Gervonta Davis, it must be said. So yeah, ultimately, I'm not really feeling the WBA right now. I don't like how they've handled the super featherweight division. I think they've made a right mess of it, to be quite honest, and they really have devalued their own titles. But, you know, regardless, this fight is a mandatory defense, so I can't really be too critical of Gervonta Davis, but, you know, this fight really does nothing for his career, and, you know, it looks like another wasted year for Gervonta Davis. I made a video a few weeks ago being somewhat critical of Gervonta Davis, and I think a few people took it the wrong way. You know, there's so many fighters I could be critical of, but a lot of the times I don't even make videos because I don't have high expectations of a lot of fighters. Gervonta Davis is a fighter that I have high expectations of, and that's not because I hold this guy to different standards because I don't like this guy. That's not the case. I hold this guy to a higher standard because I think he is a tremendously talented fighter, and right now, I will say it again, I don't think this guy is getting the fights he needs. Now granted, this is a mandatory defense, so he has to take it, but the fights before that weren't. And here we are, another fight that nobody cares about. That's why I get frustrated with the career of Gervonta Davis. I see a guy with a lot of talent, a great style to watch, explosive puncher, hand speed, fan friendly. This guy has a lot going for him, and you know, he should be doing a lot more than he's doing. It just is what it is. And it's not because I don't like this guy. It's because I want to see this guy doing better. You know, that's the difference between a fanboy and a boxing fan. A fanboy is going to sit back and say, well, this guy's undefeated. This guy's knocking out everybody. Who's he knocking out though? Who's he knocking out? I want to see this guy challenge himself and progress. That's what I want to see as a boxing fan. Because for me, if you look at the super featherweight division, there's no reason he shouldn't be fighting all of these guys now. He's got the beating, in my opinion, of all of these super featherweights. He can beat all of these guys. I would certainly pick him to beat Jamel Herring and Tevin Farmer. I think he knocks these guys out. I think he beats Andrew Cancio. The hardest fight would be Burchell. That would be a tough fight, but it's certainly winnable. All of these fights he can win, and they are all good names for his resume. But he and his team, for whatever reason, seem reluctant to take these type of fights. They seem content to tread the water and fight no names. I mean, I've heard Mayweather say this guy, Gervonta Davis, could be involved in an exhibition fight real soon. The guy's 24 years old. He needs to be building his resume, taking on other top fighters. What are we talking about exhibitions for? You know, for a 24-year-old fighter, that would be a waste of time. It's things like that why I get frustrated with the career of Gervonta Davis. But regardless, he's fighting Ricardo Nunez, and, you know, I've seen very little of Ricardo Nunez, but to me he looks like a straight up and down fighter, orthodox, 5'6", you know, fairly basic. I mean, his best win on his resume to date is over an unbeaten prospect in Elvis Torres. That was a decent win on paper. You know, Torres, he had a couple of half-decent names on the resume, but apart from that, Nunez hasn't beat anybody. He's certainly not beaten anybody at world level, and he's already been beaten a couple of times in his career against lower level opposition. So I expect Gervonta Davis to go through this guy like a hot knife through butter. I think he'll win by knockout, and I believe Gervonta Davis will look devastating doing it. He certainly needs a good performance. He needs to get rid of this guy in quick time fashion, you know. If you're fighting low level competition, at least blast these guys out. And to Gervonta Davis's credit, the last two opponents he's fought at a lower level, he has sparked these guys out. And yeah, I think he needs to do the same to Ricardo Nunez. Now, that's enough in regards to the main event. Let's have a little discussion about the undercard. There's a fight on the undercard, believe it or not, between Yuriorkis Gamboa and Roman Martinez. This fight will take place at lightweight. Now, this fight is like something out of a time machine. This is a fight you would have swore would have happened back in like 2010, 2011. But here we are in 2019, and Yuriorkis Gamboa and Roman Martinez will be squaring off on a major card. Now, joking aside, I actually don't mind this fight. If guys are going to carry on their careers when they are past their best, they may as well fight each other, right? And listen, these two have been involved in several good fights. If you put these two in together, I'm sure it's going to be a fun fight. So the fight itself could be entertaining, it could be fun, a good TV fight, a good undercard fight. I've got no problem with this fight on that side. In fact, like I said, I think it will be a good fight. There is a but though. I don't want to see the winner of this fight get recycled for a guy like Gervonta Davis to fight. There were rumours at one point of Gervonta Davis fighting Yuriorkis Gamboa. If that fight were to happen towards the end of the year, if Davis was to fight the winner of this fight, that would be really hard to stomach, in my opinion. I would have a really hard time with that fight. The likes of Yuriorkis Gamboa and Roman Martinez shouldn't be being recycled for those type of fights. Unless they do something spectacular, they really shouldn't be in those type of fights, you know? So yeah, I mean, Martinez versus Gamboa, it's a fun fight, as long as they don't recycle the winner. But there we go, we'll see what happens with that one. And also on the undercard, there's another fight at lightweight. Jezreel Corrales, the former WBA super featherweight champion, he is going to be fighting Ladarius Miller. Ladarius Miller is a decent lightweight at domestic level in the United States. I believe Ladarius Miller comes out of the Mayweather gym, I want to say. And that could be a good fight. Miller has got a win over Jamel Herring, and that win has aged quite well. Corrales, a former champion. That could be a good fight. Miller versus Corrales. I'm intrigued to see how Corrales looks at lightweight, and I believe Ladarius Miller is a good measuring stick for him. But we'll see what happens with that fight. Anyway, I'm about to wrap this one up. Those are my thoughts on the Davis versus Nunez fight and the undercard. Share your thoughts below. First and foremost, what do you think of the Gervonta Davis versus Ricardo Nunez fight? Are we underestimating Ricardo Nunez, or are you like me and feel this will be a blowout? Also, tell me how you feel about the undercard. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much for watching. If you could click the like and subscribe if you've liked the content, that would be much appreciated. Peace.